child's mock results were lower than expected, I know it can feel disappointing, but this could actually be a good thing because those results will reveal exactly what your child needs to change now so that they're in a strong position by the real exams in May. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact steps students should take after a disappointing mock results so they can rebuild their confidence quickly, make real progress, and get themselves on track for high grades by the final exams. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight into the video. Now, the first thing they need to do after a disappointing mock result is to take some time out to identify their weaker areas. So what's the best way to identify their weaker areas? Well, once they've received their mock papers, they can now review their mock papers, look over their mock papers, and identify the specific topics that held them back. So those topics where they were not getting as much marks in the mock exam, in the mock test. And not just topics, but also they need to identify patterns in the type of questions. So was it a 6-mark question that let them down, or was it 1-mark question? You'll be amazed as to the amount of 1-mark questions that students can easily miss and not get the right answer to. And those 1-mark questions really add up, right? Can make the difference between a grade 6 and a grade 7, for instance. Is it graph-based questions, or is it required practicals or core practicals? So really at this stage, it's important to identify not just the topics, but the patterns in the question, the type of skills. So this will help your child identify their weaker areas, as I said, not just in the topics, but also in the skills, like is it a 6-marker question or required practical question? Now, to help your child improve their weaker areas, once they've identified these areas, I put together a guide called 3 Simple Steps to Achieve Top Grades in GCSE Maths and Science. And I'll put that in the description below. You can access that in the description down below. Okay, so step 2, after they've identified their weaker areas and weaker skills, is to create focused plan. So that means they need to plan to focus on these areas. Now, a good way to do this, what I suggest, is to identify the top 2 to 3 weaker topics for each subject. So they can identify the top 3 topics for maths, chemistry, biology, and physics. And that's a total of 12 topics. Once they've identified those topics, they now need to schedule it into their timetable. And the goal is to cover at least 2 topics per week. So they can say this week I am scheduling photosynthesis and I'm scheduling trigonometry, for instance. And so over 6 weeks, they would have covered 12 of those top topics, right? Can you see how amazing that is? So 12 topics in just 6 weeks. And that means then that by mid-March, the latest, your child would have covered a huge grounding in their weaker areas, which means by April, they're just at this point really focusing on practicing exam questions rather than, you know, trying to relearn something that they should have learned several months ago. Now, as they are scheduling these topics in, they're planning to focus on these areas. Remember, it's not just the topics, it is the skills. So remember, they need to be saying, oh, for photosynthesis, I didn't do really well in those 4 to 6-mark questions, so I need to practice those 4 to 6-mark questions. Or in general, I noticed that I'm actually missing out on those 1-mark questions, so I need to practice them. Or it looks like I'm really struggling with questions to do with analyzing graphs, interpreting graphs, and so on and so forth. So I need to work on these. Or those required practicals and core practicals, I did really bad in them. Looks like I don't even know what a variable is, right? So then this is what I need to focus on. So really important that they are focusing on not just the topics, but the skills, because it is the skills that affects the topics, right? So by doing this step, it tells us whether the issue is content, Is it exam technique, or is the issue skill-based? Or even in many cases, it tends to be all three of them. And this will really inform their revision as well as how they revise. Okay, so they have identified the weaker topic. That's step one. Step two, they have now planned to focus on these key areas. Step three now is to do with how they revise. Now, a big mistake students make is that their revision is ineffective. And by that, I mean they are not revising the right way for the specific content or for the specific topic. And so step three is that they need to use the best revision technique for what they are revising. So for instance, if your child did poorly on required practicals and they need to revise required practical, just simply trying to look through the book is not going to help them as much as perhaps watching a step-by-step required practical video on that specific practical so that they know the method, but also so that they know the variables, right? And all the other things that's linked with scientific investigation, for instance. Also, they can do specific required practical questions. There are books that are dedicated to just required practicals and required practical practice questions. If you find that your child is not doing well in this, then this is the best way to revise it rather than just looking at the textbook. Was it their math skills that let them down? In that case, they need to go back and practice those math skills. Maybe they, they weren't converting units properly. Maybe they didn't do the answer in standard form, or they tried to do it in the standard form, they did it wrong. Was it interpreting graphs, right? All of these math skills, then they know, okay, I need to kind of go back and focus on these, because what tends to happen is students tend to sort of skip over these, not knowing that actually it is the skill that is letting them down. Okay. Another example here is it could be 6-marker questions that's letting them down. So they need to practice 6-marker questions, especially around the weaker areas. And the CGP workbooks are particularly good for this. So the key here is don't just revise using the best revision method for your specific weaker area. Okay, now I just want to mention, I know that having unexpected or poor or lower than expected, should I say, GCSE revision results can be disappointing for parents and students in particular can feel deflated. But I want us to think about athletes and performers like Beyonce, Usain Bolt, Nicki Minaj. Beyonce is an amazing, 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 amazing performer. She's just very good on stage. But part of Beyonce's success being good on stage is not because she just comes out on stage and she's like, yeah, look at me, I'm great, fantastic. No, it's because she's done lots and lots and lots and lots of mocks before. And she's made those mocks, those trials, she's done those trials. She's made mistakes during those mocks and she's looked at them and she knows, okay, now when I go and do the real thing, I know how I'm going to avoid these mistakes or minimize this mistake. So I know what I'm going to do to get better, right? To attract the crowd even more. I was reading a story about Usain Bolt, who's the world's fastest man, who, when he did a trial run, he came second to one of the other athletes, Johan Blake, I think his name is. And from then he said, no, I'm not going to come second again. And he sort of stopped to analyze, okay, what did I do wrong? And from then he's always been the best when it comes to running. So what I'm trying to say here is that test runs eyeing marks are about seeing, they're not for us to be deflated, they're about seeing where we went wrong and how we can improve in the main result instead of us using that to feel like we are a failure. So having those unexpected mock results, having those low mock results are actually a gift because we can use that, take the time out, identify where we didn't do well, why we didn't do well in that, and then use that to come out strong in the final exams. Okay, now if you want to help your child focus on the topics that make the biggest difference to their grades, then watch the next video coming up. It's really the perfect next step after analyzing the mock results. Okay, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.